members?
Council? Good evening, members of council, ladies and gentlemen, staff. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting for the Town of Pelham Council for Tuesday, April 3rd, 2018, to order. We will begin our evening by with the sing of the national anthem. I would ask Councillor Papp to lead us, and all who are able to rise. O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all lives us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. First, we have the approval of the agenda. It has been moved by Councillor Ribiak, seconded by Councillor King. Be it resolved that the agenda for the April 3rd, 2018 regular meeting of council be adopted. We do have two amendments or changes to the agenda. The first has been moved by, has that been seconded or no? Councillor Ribiak and King, both of them. Under item 14.1, the lease agreement bylaw. With Good Sports to consider that following 5.1.1. And so we're going to, if this is approved, then we'll do the signing of the bylaw immediately after a little bit of a presentation from Good Sports. And the second is a report from Councillor Ribiak regarding the Dorothy Rungeling Memorial Service that he attended. So I'm going to call the question on the amendments. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Any other changes to the agenda? There being none, I'm going to call the question on the amended agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries as amended. Thank you. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. That is any conflicts of interest that any members of council may have with any of the items. Do members of council have any conflicts they need to disclose? There are none. Thank you. Can that be so noted in the minutes? Thank you. The first item is a presentation from Colin Gillespie. Colin is here representing Good Sports Excellence. Council will recall that last meeting we approved the first and second reading of the bylaw to enter into an agreement with Good Sports to provide for a pro shop in the new Meridian Community Center for a term of 5 years. And we thought we would invite Colin in to give us a little bit of a idea of what his plans are, and then we'll formally sign it. Go ahead, Colin.
Like I said, my name is Colin Gillespie, so thank you very much, Council and Mayor Dave. So basically, the pro shop will consist of providing skate sharpening, sporting good products, team wear, sporting good equipment, hockey-related products to service all of the community events that will be there. You know, basketball, the hockey, the figure skating. Will provide all the services that will be inside the Meridian Community Center.
Great, thank you. And Goods has been in town operating for a few years.
2.5 years now, yeah.
In the on Pelham Street North.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you very much. We've come to town now, like I said, 2.5 years now, and it's refreshing to have a community that's involved so much, and especially with our little business that we have. Everything has gone very smooth. The involvement, shop local, which I love, has caused us to prosper here in town and give us the opportunity to be inside the Meridian Community Center, which we're very excited about.
Great, thank you very much. Now, I will now ask that the motion here, moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Ribiak, be it resolved the Council of the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaw, do now read a third time and do pass the same, and the Mayor and Clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaw number 3979, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into a license agreement with Good Sports Excellence for the purpose of granting a license to occupy and operate out of the designated portions of the Meridian Community Center for the property known municipally as 55 Wellspring Way, Pelham. I'm going to call the question on that third reading. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And now I would ask the clerk to join me and Mr. Gillespie to join us at the table here, and we'll duly sign the bylaw. Aye. It'll be the first time.
Got to make sure the signature is still right, though. I wouldn't want that.
Thank you. First brought her seal, so she's going to seal them. Thank you very much, really appreciate it, thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations, look forward to having you in there. Don't forget lacrosse. Okay, all right. Thanks, Colin. Good luck in there. Will do. Oops, going. All right.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gillespie. I look forward to working with you. Thank you. Now we move on to our next item, which is a presentation regarding the East Fenwick Secondary Plan, and it's wonderful to have Ms. Miana sorry, I was practicing.
Practice hard day.
Ute
Not very well.
Guillaume Batista, who's here. Thank you very much, and with an update on the East Fenwick Secondary Plan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. This is just an update for you to see what we have been compiling and working in the last couple of months. We will have a formal presentation to you, hopefully, I don't know, maybe June, July. So a whole recap on how we started and where we ended will be presented to you at that point in time. But right now, I wanted to bring you on board on what we have been doing so far. I don't know how much you remember from our previous presentation, but the purpose of what we are studying in East Fenwick was to develop a secondary plan that will guide the future development of this specific area, which is bounded by Memorial to the north, Memorial Drive, Welland Road to the south, Cream Street to the east, and Balfour to the west. This specific area has been scheduled for development for at least the last 10 years, so much so that it's under the radar at the regional level, but never we really had the chance to develop a specific secondary plan that will guide the build form, the types of land uses, and the structure that will be best to implement in this area. At the end of the day, our secondary plan will provide you with a strategy on how, more than anything, the open space system will link, how you can implement a phasing, and how you can identify the upgrades to existing infrastructure that are much needed in town, whether this development is on board or not. There are already upgrades to the system in town that will have to take place, and what best to incorporate what is envisioned for the area with the series of investments and improvements to the system that you will be doing and the region will be doing in the future. So our process had four phases. We are right now on the at the end of the third final phase, after an extensive consultation process where we had 3 public information sessions. We had 1 session with St. Anne's Elementary School kids, 3 sessions with high school kids, attendance of the Common Life Outside festival, as well as a common board at the library. We got a myriad of comments and input into our process. And right now we are updating you at the end of phase 3. Phase 4 will be a final wrap-up of the policies that will go into framing what I'm about to present to you. So, and as I mentioned, we are hoping to be back to you with a formal presentation sometime the end of June, July. We'll see. I will let Barb tell me when is best. So, I don't know if you remember the previous presentation. I introduced to you the context, how the site is informed by a specific topography, a specific character, how we receive a series of comments from the public, to a point where we started to craft an actual plan. So, when we're talking about East Fenwick, we have to remember that we have 2 very different and distinctive land use, overarching land use density prescriptions. So the areas that you see in dark yellow with a hatch are scheduled to be developed to 20 units per hectare minimum. The areas that you see in light yellow with the hatch can be developed between 8 and 15 units per hectare as per your current official plan. So in the process of designing a specific plan, you have to be careful on how you transition from something that is slightly more dense to something that is less dense. And as part of the exercise of going to the public, we actually had to identify what does 20 units per hectare looks like. So for the area that's dark yellow with the hatch, on an average, you can have different ratios. You can have more apartments and then you need less townhouses, for example. But on average, you will have about 52% of singles, small singles, with 33% townhouses and 15% apartment units in your mix if you are to deliver 20 units per hectare. For the other areas that are to deliver 8 to 15 units per hectare, you have a slightly bigger single detached component, about 72%, 25% townhouses and 3% apartments, or it can be, 28 townhouses, no apartments, and singles. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what we are kind of looking at and what we had to use in our toolbox to come up with a new plan. So the plan hinges on 3 very distinctive kind of sub-neighborhoods. The circles you see on the screen are based on a 5-minute walk to a central feature. This is kind of a tenet of good community design, where you have a definable center with defined edges to a community. Now, the challenge we had with this study is that all the areas that you see with the hatch that goes from, say, west-east are areas that still need further environmental studies, because we could not foresee at this point in time, and we could not further complete those studies. We decided to create a special policy area for all those areas that will still be subject to further environmental studies, but that could either revert to developable land or could stay environmental pending the studies. And that difference, it will be addressed in our policies. So you are not stuck with having to write policy until the studies are finished. You have kind of a buffer policy that allows you to decide what's proper depending on final studies. So that's why you see green areas that don't have hatch, green areas that have hatch. But the principal idea was to have 3 distinctive sub-neighborhoods with 3 distinctive parkettes as their centers. We also are proposing to have a really, really well-structured plan where we try to connect all the way from Memorial Drive down to Welland and then tie back to Balford. If the environmental studies allow it, potentially we could cross to Cream Street, but that will come up at that time. One of the principal tenets also of community design is that you try to connect collectors to collectors and have mid-block connections, so you don't end up with the classic 70s development where you have loops of a loop of a loop, but nothing connecting, ending up in a nightmare of traffic for the future. So that's what this plan puts together. It's based on a green structure plan that uses existing environmental features as part of a future trail system, connects to the little green dots that are parks, and locates the stormwater management facilities, one north of Canberra Road and one south of Welland Road. So you can see how the pedestrian, the connectivity, the cycling connectivity starts to work within the community. So we puncture the actual mass of the land. Once again, the road structure is very simple, connecting north-south, east-west, and further extending Sunset Drive down to Welland Street. Finally, once you put all those layers together, you end up with a land use schedule that's basically predicated on what we kept hearing from the public. It was like, fine, you have to develop, we have to grow, we get it, but we at the same time want to maintain the character and flavor of Fenwick. So the strategy that we put forward was to basically bound all existing roads with that light yellow that you see there, with singles and semis that will have very, very prescriptive siting guidelines. So I will further explain in further down the road, but you will achieve a building that fits within the context. And then inwards, where you see the darker yellow, you will have more of the more contemporary development with townhouses, apartments, and singles. So this is just one of the many ways you can develop the site in the future. It's a demonstration plan, and it takes into account the fact that you will create a central area with a mix of townhouses, singles, and in this instance, for example, this is one of our designs, 2 blocks of apartments in the center of the community. We're envisioning that if apartments are to be located in the community, it will be good to have them close to open space facilities. So it feels like they are not compressed or in between development. They are more open to the open space system. And all these plans and all these demonstration plans take into account the fact that eventually, if environmental studies prescribe that that hatch area, the area that I was showing you, I don't know if I can show you in here. if that area is further defined and it gets smaller, you still can apply the same principles. So the demonstration plans are usually just like the cherry on top of the ice cream, just to give you a flavor of what's to come. But the schedules that you see here will give you the strategy that will function whether that hatched green area shrinks or stays the same. So I won't bother you through the whole policies that we are putting together, but I wanted to showcase how the light yellow will enhance and will ensure, the policies will ensure that the character of Fenwick is preserved through a series of guidelines that ensure that the massing transition, setbacks, especially where you locate your driveway and your garage, are really, really, really monitored and implemented. So you still maintain that really nice character that Fenwick is known for. So that's what you will see in the light yellow. In the darker yellow or orange, you will see more of a mix of units. They can be more small singles. They can have apartments. They can have townhouses. In the areas designated as neighborhood centers, you will have a series of parkettes that are part of a 5-minute walking distance network. We are proposing that in case, for example, some of the environmental features are not deemed significant from the environmental standpoint, that we can use them as parkettes. The parquet you see on the top picture there in the slide it's an old, I would say minor woodlot in Markham that was deemed not significant as an environmental feature, but the municipality still wanted to save. So now it's part of a parquet and playground area. So it's really special because it's something that's already established, has a lot of character, and you don't have to get rid of what's already there. So that's one of the policies that will be included in our document. Once again, special policy area, the hatch area will loosely define the boundaries of what still has to go through an environmental assessment. Once that area is finally defined, it can take on the development that's adjacent, the type of development that's adjacent. And finally, the natural heritage system, which is basically, the provincial significant wetland that is already in place and is not going to be developed. And it on the contrary, it will be part of the open space system. Eventually, hopefully, having a trail network that could potentially connect Memorial all the way down to Welland, and in the future, maybe all the way to the trail, the railroad trail. Roads are also key. They are the second part of your equation. If you don't get the roads right, even if the siding of the houses and the apartments is right, you still end up with a Mississauga look. So you do have to, we spent a long time with Andrea figuring the crossroads and the cross sections. And in all instances, depending where we are, we will have at least one sidewalk, opportunities for cycling. In the instance of Canberra Road, we took on the recommendations of the downtown studies that you commissioned a while ago, and the promenade idea of linking Fenwick with Ridgeville and Fonthill is a very strong one. It will be a tough thing to implement, but we created cross sections that start thinking, if you're already developing new development on the north side of Canberra, maybe we can start laying the basis of a multi-use trail or something that eventually will link all the communities. So that's also part of the proposal we are putting forward. So that's what we have been doing for the last 3 months, and we are waiting for the region's comments and our own team comments, town staff comments, and we will be compiling everything for a formal presentation to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation, very comprehensive. Members of council may have some questions or or you may not. Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Enjoyed your presentation. I do have a couple of questions.
Yes.
The principal road plan that you showed, is it the thoughts that that principal road plan will be prescriptive? And so as it's laid down in the secondary plan will be the way that those principal roads would have to be developed by the developers that own the land in that area?
The basic principle of tying and connecting all nearby roads will be present. Whether they do that little bump, say, north of Canberra or not, that still will be determined at the tertiary level. But the fact that a road that may swing the other way a little bit, will connect Memorial to Canberra, for example, will be part of the review system. And each road has a specific cross-section that we hope to put forward too. So when the road is developed, it's not only the alignment, but the actual cross-section that ends up being what we envision for the community.
So there's two parts to the equation. The cross-section is prescriptive. The east-west, north-south connectivity is prescriptive, but not necessarily the exact location within the framework.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, the second question is, you had a demonstration plan there, and I guess maybe your answer to the roads kind of answers my next question. The demonstration plan that you have there, is that also intended to be prescriptive or not really?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor. The demonstration plan has specifically been put as part of an appendix section. It's just one of maybe 10 ways you can develop the land using the principles we are introducing. But we do not want to subject a specific developer to this is my design or nothing. So as long as they deliver on the principles that you see highlighted through all these other schedules, these will be schedules to the secondary plan. They are subject to this. Now, the demonstration plan will be nice. It's one way of doing it, but there are other ways of delivering on the same.
So if the developer brings forward a plan that accomplishes or meets the specifications of the provincial policy statement and in terms of densities and what have you, whether there's apartments or townhouses or what have you, that's not really key, other than the buffer that faces on the collector roads.
Exactly.
That's more prescriptive.
That's
but-
more prescriptive.
I see. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rivak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. Actually, it's quite exciting. Two areas of questions. First has to do with the road system. One of the things that has been of concern to me as this was developing was that East Fenwick be, for want of a better word, kind of aimed at the nearest downtown, which is, of course, Fenwick itself. And I note that the exits leaving East Fenwick to the west have not been increased, but to the east, to the east have not been increased, but to the west have been. So that I think is pretty positive. How do you feel the proposed road system assists in making East Fenwick a part of kind of the greater Fenwick?
If you notice, and we as part of the design process, we always look at all the interconnecting streets that lead onto the site to tie back to them. Unfortunately, in this instance, other than the surrounding streets, there were no meeting streets that we could tie to.
Agreed.
So the only one that we had is Sunset Drive, and that we extended. But as a bare minimum, we wanted to show and implement one east-west connection and one north-south connection as a bare minimum. If they are in the demonstration plan, you can see that we show further connections to all surrounding streets in an attempt also to increase pedestrian and cycling opportunities. The entire plan is designed to further support and encourage retail in the downtown area. That's why there is no commercial here. If anything, it has been assumed that people can work from home, and that has been counted on and accounted for in the traffic generation numbers. But we were focused on not only further increasing the population to support retail in downtown Fenwick, but also in encouraging having all these sorts of streets or trails that will lead you to existing streets and then go down to.
Thank you. So that was an active part of your umbrella as you were looking at this. That's great. And a quick comment with regard to the amount of involvement from residents. You indicated that you had some discussion with a number of schools, but there was more public presentation. Do you have offhand an idea of what the total number of people were that gave you comments that were active and how they might have been distributed demographically?
Each PIC session was attended by at least 60 persons, no more. Because the PICs are tended to be attended by 50 over population, we made a point of attending the Come Alive Outside event, and that for me was really interesting because that's the first time we got young couples with kids stopping by and really having a completely different conversation on what's supposed to happen in town, which is very encouraging, but it's very hard to get them. They are not going to come to our meetings after a day of work and having to put kids to sleep and everything else. So I think I have to say that I have to recognize and give credit to the town. They were on the ball from the beginning in an attempt and an effort to really include all sorts of demographics. And then the kids, they are great.
Sure. But what's important, I think, is that we understand that you were informed by a broad spectrum of views from a wide demographic, and that the numbers were fairly significant.
Yeah, they were fairly significant for a small town as Fenwick. I think not only with well-attended PIC meetings, but also we had a survey, and we got up towards 50 complete surveys, delivered back to Barb. We also had plenty of comments on the community board, and we also set up a special Fenwick email. And we got emails from local residents as well. So we tried to get a good demographic mix.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Others? Councilor Pat?
Very quickly, thank you. I've become more fascinated with this. I just returned from Vancouver 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
So I watched the development, not in new areas, but along Granville, of integrating older communities with new development. And a couple of things you caught my eye on is, one is I like the road design has taken the pedestrian cycling off the roads onto a separate. They've integrated new buildings into older parts that have been there for decades. So I think the challenge is, you're right, is to try and, I think we got that opportunity here in Fenwick to take a historical development of a community and turn it into something of a nuance that someone of all age groups can feel comfortable living and commuting there and being part of. And that's why when I saw this, I thought, this reminds me, not to take away from the typical subdivision, but it has a chance of what's there now, along with the road system, as Councillor Kersey and Councillor Ribiak, of bringing together. So the point is, from the developer standpoint, when you market this, why do you want to live in Fenwick? Like, why would you come there? And these would be the things that would be part of it. So I look forward to your further reports, and I like the idea that we can be resilient, so we can be adaptive if the times change, depending on the demographics and what happens, that this plan is actually set up in such a format that it would be able to adapt to that. So I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Others with questions? I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind, in addition to the ones that some councillors have asked. A big issue when I did attend the session at the fire hall was drainage and storm water, etc. They're looking for environmental protections. There was talk of bio wells and garages to keep the water where it is as opposed to send it down a municipal drain. And the promise or the hope, I think, was during that session that there would be certain policies that would be written into the plan to address that. Can you just talk a little bit about some of those policies that might be written into the plan?
So as part of the servicing and stormwater management policies that are part of the secondary plan, we have a whole section on how to not only deliver on the stormwater management system that you see proposed here, but also on how to incorporate bioswales. Bioswales are nicely named ditch areas, but still very important ditch areas that, for example, were incorporated into the cross-section for the main road here. So you can incorporate that into the cross-section. Our servicing team came up with a strategy on how you can have a series of drainage areas, wet ponds for when you have really heavy rains in all the little kind of parquets.
Okay.
And that's where the design of having 3 parquets became really, really key, because that suddenly you had kind of a plan B strategy for when you have the flash floodings,
Right.
and you have areas where you can, channel all this flooding.
Okay. Good. I'm glad you took that feedback and are considering
It
it.
was very much present from the beginning, and I completely understand.
Okay, great. Thank you. You mentioned about the green areas, and I understood that some of that was to have been determined in this time frame as opposed to a little bit down in the future. I see that the solid green is, those are, can't touch, but the others, there's the potential.
Yeah.
How is that going to be resolved? Can you
Oh.
just outline that a little bit?
Yes, any development that's to happen here will have to go through a site plan and draft plan application. And as part of that site plan and draft plan application, you will have to complete a series of studies, of which one of them will be to finalize the study, the environmental study for the hatch areas. Whether they're green or whether they are yellow, you need to complete an environmental assessment of those features. The resulting studies will be reviewed by the Niagara, NPCA, or the region, whoever is doing that now, and obviously the town staff.
Okay, I thought that was running, I'll say concurrently with the work that you're doing as opposed to sequentially.
It's running kind of concurrently, but I think we were faster, so it's not finished. And instead of delaying the process that we have here, we came up with the idea of creating kind of a buffer zone where we recognize that the studies are not finished and completed, but we don't want to hold up your study either. So we create that series of policies that let you address the fact that maybe it shrinks a third of it or a half of it. We don't know yet, and we
Okay.
couldn't wait.
That helps. Some of the parts on the demonstration plan, especially along, I'll say, the Cream Street corridor, there seems to be some higher density potential or suggestions there, both at the corner of Wallen Road and Cream and Cambro and Cream. And yet those are in areas that are the lower density, the 8, as opposed to the 20 people in jobs per hectare or whatever that is. So can we just hear a little bit about your rationale for increasing the density in those locations as opposed to elsewhere in the plan?
Yes. So if you remember, we have an area that's subject to 8 to 15 units per hectare. Because you already, within that area, you have really, really large lots like this.
Okay.
Many of these lots won't redevelop. So the density that they are not generating gets transferred.
Oh, okay.
So this is still, from the urban design perspective, the corners were deemed as interesting points for really kind of landmark buildings. And the precedence that you have is the Canberra, retirement home. I think, well, some people likes it and some other people dislikes it. It's a really neat and interesting landmark that announces the formal entrance to Fenwick. So we thought that something similar with a lot of guidelines to guide the stepping back, the setback, the location of parking, and the other elements of building could be part of how we signalize now the east entrance to Fenwick.
Okay. So will that be, you'll write that into the policies then, that these are to be
Yes, so
signature buildings or landmark buildings, or, I see the asterisks there, but not in the south.
yeah, we will build that up.
Okay. The final question is about phasing. You mentioned phasing as a potential for build-out. I think people are wondering how it's going to be built out, what those kind of things. So can you just comment about phasing?
Yes, so we are in the process of reviewing our servicing report.
Okay.
Based on that, we will determine what the best way of developing the land will be. There are considerable servicing enhancements for the area, from water to sanitary. So pending that analysis, we will be able to tell you from the servicing perspective how is best to grow. As far as a timeline, anything from 10 to 15 years, depending on market absorption.
I wasn't aware that you made the connection between phasing and servicing, so I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you, unless anybody else has any questions. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you
It's
for
been moved by
having me.
Councillor Durley, second by Councillor King. Be it resolved that Council receive the East Fenwick Secondary Plan update envisioning Fenwick for information. Any other comments or questions? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much, Ms. Miata Guillaume-Batista, and for your presentation and for your work on this. We look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we move to other portions of our meeting. It's been moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Accursi. Moving on to the report of the Regional Councillor. Be it resolved that the April 3rd, 2018 report submitted by Regional Councillor Beatty be received for information. Questions or comments regarding the Regional Councillor's report? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Now we move to adoption of minutes. It's been moved by Councillor King, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak. Be it resolved, following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. Minutes of the special council meeting of March 19th, council meeting of March 19th, and the special council of March 26th. Are there any errors or omissions in those minutes? No. There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Next, we move to consent agenda items to be considered in block. Before I read the resolution, which is duly moved and seconded, are there any items that members of council would like to lift for separate consideration? There being none, it's been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor King. Be it resolved, the following consent agenda items be received, the recommendations therein be approved as applicable. Presentation of recommendations arising from the Committee of the Whole report, the P&P report, Policy and Priorities Committee of March 19th, 2018, and the minutes for approval as well of that meeting. Action correspondence of routine nature. This is regarding National Dental Hygienist Week. Be it resolved, the Council authorized the Mayor to declare the week of April 7th to 13th to be National Dental Hygienist Week in the town of Pelham, and to focus on oral health and celebrate success of dental hygienists, And also, I think the arches will be a special color one of these evenings, so we'll send an email around. Information correspondence, be it resolved that the following correspondence items be received for information. Town of Oakville regarding protecting water, future generations growing the greenbelt in the outer ring. Township of Wainfleet regarding a resolution for the NPCA, appointment to the NPCA. City of Welland resolution regarding remediation of abandoned and contaminated properties. The District School Board of Niagara proposal for disposition of surplus real property. A thank you letter from Judy Reed, Citizen of the Year. And the Region of Niagara Environmental Impact Study Guidelines Administrative Update. And finally, we have committee minutes for information from the Pelham Seniors Advisory Committee of February 7th and of the Active Transportation Committee of March 8th. Any comments or questions on any of the items under consent agenda?
Mine are 9.2.1. It says the P&P minutes were, the meeting was called to order by the mayor. I believe I did that.
Okay, I'll make that change, thank you.
You
that
did,
correct?
thank you, yes, yes, you
I
did.
want to go out on a bang.
Okay, thank you, Councilor.
Sorry, I couldn't help that.
Thank you. And Councilor Papp, go ahead.
Just, I guess, to you, Mr. Mayor, specifically, I've seen all of these different municipalities adopt the resolution to appoint people to the NPCA. So just, we don't have to discuss it here tonight. So what's the next steps? So does the Board of Directors of the NPCA have to amend their articles of incorporation to include that? Does it involve anything else further? I'm just curious, in spite of all everything that's gone on for the past 18 months, maybe you can help me with it, or is it up to them to decide, or is it up to Regional Council to decide?
Council may recall that we had initiated a resolution back last January, February, I guess, is when we
Yep.
actually approved it. And that was sent to the region because it was the region that really decides the membership. The region didn't want to deal with it, so they sent it to the minister. The minister said it really is the region that deals with it and sent it back. And then it kind of got through and was quickly shuffled off through resolution at Regional Council. So I'm pleased that the City of Welland and now the Township of Wainfleet have endorsed very similar resolutions. At some point, we may want to, and I can reach out to the mayor of Welland, for instance, who sits on the NPCA and reinitiated the process, and say it really is something that Regional Council should deal with this term so that it's dealt with prior to the start of next term. My recollection, I'm sure Council will recall, is that there's nothing sort of written down. And that's what the region, or that's what the local councils are asking for. Like, write it down, let's figure out how we want to do this. There was hope, I think, as well, that the province would amend the Conservation Authorities Act. And this was proposed by a local member as well, to include members from the community on the NPCA. That was not included in that revision of the act. So
Okay.
it can be something that we can, I'll follow up with the Mayor of Welland, for instance, and see if we can push this issue and get it decided before the end of the term. Thank you.
Okay. I want to just keep it in the forefront.
Okay,
Thank you.
Councilor Durley, to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, building on that, would it be prudent for us to perhaps correspond with the region and with the MPCA saying no action has taken place on there? Could you please update us on your plan to deal with our wishes and the wishes of other municipalities? You know, would that be,
Okay.
would that be in order, perhaps a direction?
Sure.
Can we take that as direction? Let's do that. I think that's
Perfect.
gives a little bit more to the request.
And we could copy Wainfleet and Welland on
Right.
that as well, because this is what's precipitating
Right.
the action. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll do that. Thank you. Anyone else to that issue? Okay. Anyone else to other issues under consent? Councilor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see the DSBN has declared surplus Pelham Center Public School, and not a real big surprise. I wonder if it'd be pertinent to have a report brought back to us from planning with respect to property use, current zoning, potential for redevelopment, et cetera. Also, do we have any idea on what the, they say fair market value, but have they released an appraisal or anything of that nature?
Let's hear from the director if she knows anything further. Madam Director?
Mr. Mayor, through you, school board is, I think by the regulations, are required to sell the lands at fair market value, so they would have done an appraisal. We, of course, have not seen that. The town is kind of one of the public bodies that are given the first option, that they notify that the land is surplus. There's the town and other public bodies that could put a bid in to acquire the lands should they wish. After that, it would then go on the open market if there is no interest from a public body to acquire the lands. With respect to what the current zoning is on that land, it's currently zoned site-specifically to permit a school, and that's it. It's in the Greenbelt Plan area as well, so new uses and new zoning bylaw amendments to alter the use would have to be something that's more in keeping with the intent of the Greenbelt Plan. So it's would be a bit of a speculation to to put out there what it could potentially be used for, but it is in the agricultural area, and I guess there are a number of options that it could be used for, but it is restricted to those uses, and certainly it wouldn't be able to be used for urban uses. Services do not exist out there. It's on a cistern and a septic system, so there are those kind of servicing constraints on the property as well. There's also an original schoolhouse kind of built into the center of the school, so there is some cultural heritage value on that property as well, although it's not designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act.
Mr. Councillor, I think the director's answered your questions.
Yep.
Other than site-specific zoning, like, do you need a report for that, or?
No, I think
there's a lot of information
probably
here.
not necessary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you.
I guess the test would be less impactful from a Greenbelt perspective than a school.
Right.
Would be allowed a school, or something less impactful than a school.
Correct.
So,
Fine, thank you.
okay, thank
Yep.
you. Anyone else to that matter?
Just a quick
Councillor
one.
Brown?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So school being strictly school, not for other educational purposes.
The zoning specifies a school.
School.
It doesn't specify whether it's a public or private school, whether it's elementary or secondary, or anything along that line. It just specifies a school.
That's fine. Thank you, Madam Director. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else to that matter? Anyone else to any of the other matters? Okay, I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Next is my report for your consideration. Very pleased, I'll go quickly through this and highlight some parts of it. Very pleased, and thank you to the members of the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, members of staff, as well as the more than 50 participants of youth across Pelham who gathered at Old Pelham Town Hall for a youth forum. They were especially looking at ideas on how to make Summerfest more youth-friendly, and build on the successes that we've had in the past, and also what type of activities they'd like to participate in the new community center. And so they are currently working on kind of culminating all that information, putting it into a report, and we anticipate probably May that report should come to council. It has to go to the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council first, and then come to council. So we look forward to that. And thank you again to the staff for assisting with that, putting that together. Very pleased to join Councillor Kersey and town staff on March 2nd at the Festival and Events Ontario Awards Night. We had those awards last meeting here, but it was great to be at that gala and to have our fingers crossed as going through and hearing that event, and also offering thanks on behalf of council for winning the Green Award. Very pleased, along with Mr. Ottaway and Ms. Van Ravensway, to participate in something called Creating Active Communities Together. It was a conference in Dartmouth, and where we shared Pelham's successes on increasing walkability and cyclability and activity. We also learned about what other communities are doing across North America, including the latest research on participation. Very, very interesting, and we're actually working with a group that's trying to do some of this, especially participation as a prescription. There's hopefully some follow-up out of that. Special thanks to the Nova Scotia Ministry of Communities, Culture and Heritage for inviting us to present at the conference. And it was an honor to meet the Lieutenant Governor and the Minister, and we appreciated their focus on committing those in Nova Scotia to a healthier and more active lifestyle. Of course, we had the announcement in early March about the new Meridian Community Center, so thanks very much again to the Meridian Credit Union for their gift that was announced that day. And thanks very much to Intercom staff and Ball Construction for organizing the event, and the major donors for attending as well. It was a great announcement day. I was pleased to attend Queen's Park and the Lieutenant Governor for Ontario, who honored under something called the Friends of the Greenbelt Award, honored the Honourable David Crombie and those involved in the coordinated review. That's the review of the Greenbelt and the other planning documents. And very pleased to offer special congratulations to Niagara Peninsula's Rep. Debbie Zimmerman, who's also a member of the Grape Growers. I was pleased to help out JP and join Mayor Campion in Welland. JP's a community living volunteer, and we delivered Meals on Wheels, in our case, to 10 Pelham residents. In the case of the Welland Mayor, to Welland residents. It's a good way to promote an excellent program of not only nutrition, but also a program that checks on folks that might need a check during the day in the afternoon. I was honored to offer thanks to the dedicated Pelham Cares board members, volunteers, and staff at their annual general meeting on the 27th of March. And also pleased to announce that the Mayor's Gala will be supporting, this year's Mayor's Gala will be supporting the Connecting Kids program up to $5,000, which is that special program where those that are less fortunate can participate in various events, whether it's piano or soccer or lacrosse or whatever, and paid for out of this fund. You'll see some great pictures there of smiling Phil Rittenhouse, along with Councillor Kersey and Mala Kersey. We're very pleased to be there for Phil Rittenhouse's last shift with ice in it and people using the facility, and that was on the 27th as well. And Phil blew that horn in the arena for 39 seconds, marking his last shift in the ice after 39 years of service in that facility. So I know there were also celebrations, I think, last Wednesday and Thursday to kind of mark the end, the skating, community skate, etc. Just a great way to kind of close off many years of service of the existing Pelham Arena, and Phil looks forward to, and we all look forward, I know, to Phil blowing that first horn in the new Meridian Community Center this fall. And finally, it was very, very great weather, great crowd on Saturday morning at the Arena Park, where we had 1,000 youth, kids, and also parents, grandparents, etc., for the Easter Extravaganza. It was a great event, so thanks very much to the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council for organizing the annual Easter egg hunt, and also Pelham staff. Great to have the firefighters there as well, and Sparky and the Easter Bunny, and it's just a great event. Money was being raised for lacrosse as well, and thanks to Enbridge for doing the barbecue. Members of council, that's my report. It has been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor King. Be it resolved that the mayor's report dated April 3rd, 2018 be received for information. Unless there's any questions, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. We did add a separate item at the request of Councillor Ribbiak. Councillor Ribbiak, update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was pleased and honored, actually, to bring greetings on behalf of you and council to the celebration of the life of Dorothy Rungeling, held at Lookout Ridge Retirement Home, which was her residence until her death. I also attended in my capacity as chair of the Niagara Central Dorothy Rungeling Airport, so named to commemorate her extraordinary record of achievements as an aviator, which began and continued right here in what is now the town of Pelham. While best known as an aviator, competing and winning in a number of international, transcontinental, and Canadian air races, training others as an instructor, becoming the first Canadian woman to receive a commercial air pilot license, and the first Canadian woman to solo in a helicopter, achievements for which she was recognized with an Order of Canada in 2003 and a commemorative stamp on her 99th birthday. She was also a poet, author, journalist, computer instructor, golfer, remarkably undertaking some of these careers in her 80s and 90s and continuing into her second century of life. And we should not forget, Mr. Mayor, that Dorothy was also, in a way, our predecessor, having served on Pelham Council in 1964. Dorothy died in February, well into her 107th year of life. I'm pleased that the Niagara Central Dorothy Rungeling Airport is maintaining a commemorative wall in Hangar 1, including some of her air race trophies, that will remind users of the airport of its namesake long into the future. Great. And next year, the airport will be the terminus of the 2019 Air Race Classic, a transcontinental air race in which Dorothy competed and won several times. So it was a great event, Mr. Mayor. People were there from all over the country. There were people who she had instructed as pilots when they were teenagers, and they continue to fly to this day and came. That's my report, Mr. Mayor. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Councillor. Any questions? We look forward to seeing that wall and learning more about that race.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much. Do we need a motion to receive? I think we should receive the report. It looks like you had it written. Perhaps you can provide it to the clerk.
I will email it.
Councillor Durley, will you move?
Absolutely, yes.
Moved by Councillor Durley, second by Councillor King, that we receive Councillor Ribbiak's report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. Now we move to staff reports requiring action. It has been moved by Councillor Lane, seconded by Councillor Durley. Be it resolved, the council receive the report on human trafficking, and the council approves a $1,000 donation to the YWCA to assist them in providing training to first responders. I want to thank the fire chief for putting this report together. It does come out of a number of municipalities that have funded this at request of the YWCA and another municipality. Do members of council have any questions for the chief? Councilor Papp?
Well, I was fascinated when I read this. I do support it. I guess my question is, I think you answered it, Mr. Mayor, that I presume that several municipalities have also given money to the YWCA for this?
Chief?
Mayor, I don't know the exact count as of today, but Fort Erie donated 5,000, Niagara Falls donated 5,000, Wayne Fleet 500, and
Good.
Pelham tonight, and then it's going around. I don't think that there's going to be anybody that doesn't participate, but it sounds good.
Okay, second question is the obvious question. Once you train our first responders, what exactly is expected for them to do that? Because I do know that if these types of situations are identified, they normally involve the police.
Here, Mr. Mayor. It's actually, the training is being extended not only to first responders, to other groups, probably our bylaw department, anybody that interacts with the public. And this will be very similar to some of the seniors programs we have. So if we go into house for, let's say, a medical call, and we notice certain signs, then there's an agency to contact, and they'll do the professional follow-through. So this is very similar. If we see something that doesn't quite look right, we won't get involved. We just so gives us the ability to make that judgment call and make a phone call.
The only reason I say is many of us, all of us know that if, in the cases of child abuse, we have a duty, an obligation to report. And in this particular instance, I think I'm happy to say that this particular situation has reached international levels in service clubs where they're monitoring this very carefully. And I would agree that as long as, and the YWCA would be able to give, if I saw something or you saw something, we know how to go about getting the appropriate authorities involved. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much, Councillor. Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of questions, neither of which should be interpreted as being negative towards this, but I just would like to know, is the YWCA actually going to do the training, or are they going to be the facilitators and go out and find the expertise, those with expertise to be able to deliver the appropriate education? Because I question whether the WCA would have that within their.
Yes.
Okay, Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You're correct. This is being facilitated or organized through one agency, which is YW. Just on our own, we're not able to do it, and then they will bring in the proper experts, police, that have the subject matter that can deliver it to us. And 100% of the money is just for training, it's for nothing else than YWC. It's all for training.
And my second question is through you to our treasurer. Would this $1,000 donation be part of our permissive grant, or where would we be funding it from?
I think the chief has that in the report. Chief?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and I have I have the $1,000 in my emergency management fund.
Okay.
Thank you.
So because it's for training,
Yep.
it's coming out of that fund. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Papp?
Quickly, you don't mean to, one time, or is this going to be an annual one time? Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Thanks again, Chief, for bringing that forward. It was something that we received last meeting, but it's something that you suggested, so thank you for bringing that forward. Now we move to presentation consideration of bylaws. It's been moved by Councillor Kersey. Councillor Papp?
Yes, sorry, Mr. Mayor, just so I can, for clarity purposes, if there's a notice of motion required, I have to prepare it first, and I don't have to declare now what I'm going to be bringing forward?
Thank you. Yeah, notices will follow bylaws. You can either do it at the meeting or as the agenda is distributed. Madam Clerk, is that correct?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. If it's with the agenda, it would be under the mover and seconder and specifically worded. You can give notice of motion this evening verbally as to the context, and then formulate the motion with the mover and seconder.
I would like to do that in the matter of context, and it's something that you and I were going to talk about, but I want to do, okay? After you've done the bylaws.
Okay, all right, thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor Papp. Presentation consideration of bylaws. Be it resolved, the Council of the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass the same, and the Mayor Clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaw. And this is being a bylaw to change the name of a highway within the Town of Pelham from Shaw Avenue to Meridian Way. Questions or comments?
Good idea.
I presume that we will find another location within the East Fawn Hill area for Shaw Avenue. Thank you. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Councillor, did you want to give that notice now then?
I would love to.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, and I know we'll have further discussion, I would like to propose that I will bring forward a notice of motion with respect to the Town of Pelham applying together or separately from the region of Niagara for the development of long-term care beds in East Fonthill. And I will explain that in more detail in light of what is happening at the region right now. There's been an announcement of there's new long-term care beds being announced, and I think it's our time to make a step forward to apply for them.
Okay.
All
Thank you
right,
very
and
much,
I'll word
Councillor.
it, and now if there's someone who's willing to second it, if not, but I am going to prepare it on that basis.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor. There's some discussion about long-term care beds tomorrow morning at Corporate Services Committee, and I think this is prompting the councillor to do so at this time. So we'll make sure that the rest of council is aware of that as well.
Right, I don't want to preempt that, that's why, but I want to get it out,
Yeah.
especially now that the call for applications is taking place.
Okay, thank you very much. We look forward to that. Now we move to confirming bylaws. It has been moved by Councillor Lane, second by Councillor Durley. Be it resolved, the following bylaw be read a first, second, third time and passed. Bylaw 3986 to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of council of the town of Pelham in its regular meeting held on the 3rd day of April 2018. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. And last but also not least, we do have, the last is the adjournment bylaw. And before I put the adjournment bylaw on, I wanted to turn to the CAO because there's a staff member for whom this is their last council meeting. Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This evening, we bid farewell to our first Director of Human Resources, Paula Gilbert. Paula was brought on 3 years ago, where she came from the private sector into the public sector for, I think, her first time. And during that time, she's had a absolutely phenomenal impact on the organization. In a very short period of time, Paula, among other things, has conducted a comprehensive wage review and a compensation strategy, which was, anyone that's gone through one of those know it's a very significant and large project in any organization. She effectively engaged the employees to become part of that process and became more of a coach than a director or manager. She has developed our hiring processes, which have been very successful since they've been implemented. Her onboarding procedures and exit interviews, all part of the suite of services we provide employees that are coming on or that are leaving the organization. And she's also implemented and maintained confidential employee support, something that our organization, I think, was lacking, and the ability to work with our employees in a wide variety of issues, whether it be employee issues, health issues, etc. It was nice to have a professional at the helm and to be able to develop that confidential ability for employees to seek the help that they need and do it in a confidential manner. She's also been very instrumental in developing the organizational design for our new Meridian Community Center. She has realized significant savings in the redesign of employee benefits and continues to do so, including this afternoon, where we had a very comprehensive meeting about the work that she has done in this area, even though that she is departing, that will realize the town significant savings in our benefits. And she's developed and executed hiring processes and standards, payroll and benefits, among many of her day-to-day tasks. So on a personal note, it's extremely sad when we lose a member of our organization. And it's important for the public to know that most times we don't talk about that because employees are entitled to privacy. But in this situation, Paula has very graciously said that I'm moving on, and here's where I'm going. And in response, I think it's nice to be able to celebrate her contribution to our organization and to see how far we've come in the last 3 years and the level of professionalism that she's brought in and instilled in the organization. And really created something for the employees that I think is extremely valuable in the way that they do the work and the performance that we see on a day-to-day basis, all certainly credited to Paula. Paula has also been a mentor for me on many occasions where I've gone to her and closed the door and asked for advice on many different issues, and she's always been a very reliable and solid person for me. She's helped me grow as an individual, which I appreciate. And you have a good team when the members of the team around you lift you up, and certainly Paula does that for each of us on the senior management team, but also on an organizational level. Paula is going back to the private sector from whence she came. Although I personally, and I think our organization are extremely sad that she's moving along, we are extremely proud of her, and that she knows that wherever she goes, she'll always have a home here with us at the town of Pelham, and that you'll always be welcome here. And we appreciate your service, we appreciate your contribution, and we certainly thank you for helping us and making everybody's lives better, and really paving the way for the future for our organization. So I personally and professionally thank you, and I do so on behalf of all the employees. You will be certainly celebrated, but you will also be very missed. So we wish you all the best in your new endeavors, and we will meet again.
I just want to add on behalf of council, to build on what the CEO has indicated. I remember when I first met you, you were very full of energy and very in tune with what you're doing and what you want to accomplish, and that energy level has just continued and grown through the years. And the CEO outlined the tremendous work that you've done over the last 3 years and how you've really moved the organization so far forward. And we appreciate your, on behalf of council colleagues, we appreciate your dedication, your commitment, and all of your work to move this organization so far forward. We wish you the best in the future, and very, very pleased with your new position for you. And so it's a happy, sad. We're really sad to see you go, but very happy for you personally and professionally that you found such a great position that you're going to. So thank you very much. I don't know if you wanted to, or other councillors want to say, do you want to say something?
I do, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
Through Mr. Mayor, I always have something to say, I guess. It has truly been a joy. This has been a wonderful 3 years. And every day walking in this building was a joy. And that doesn't mean that it's been easy, because certainly my peers can tell you we've had some spirited conversations over the last 3 years. But it has been challenging, and it's been fun. And whenever you go into an organization such as this, where HR is embraced as a business partner, where HR is not seen as the police and there to keep people on the straight and narrow, but truly embraced as a business partner, where I've been invited to sit in meetings to understand how departments work and to help people create efficiencies and find streamlines. This is where I truly get my joy. And you know, we see these wonderful pictures of Phil and our ladies that work in RCW, who everybody kind of knows because they're in the forefront. I get this wonderful opportunity to meet all of our staff, and to know all of our staff, and to know our accountants, and to know our people from the clerk's department, and our ladies and gentlemen that work out in various buildings that we might not see. And these truly are the heart of this building, and I get inspiration from them, and this is where I get my energy, that I can come back and bring this every day. And I guess I'd just like to say that whenever I come to work, I try to think of what will my legacy be. I always want to leave a positive legacy. So I hope I left a legacy of teaching and of progress and of friendship, and time will tell. But I will miss you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks so much, Ms. Gilbert. I think there'll be something a little bit more formal with staff later on that will, so we'll repeat this with the majority of staff later. So thank you. So now we move to adjournment. It has been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor King. Be it resolved, this regular meeting of council be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for Monday, April 16th, 2018. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. We do have committee, and we will take a 5-minute break before we start committee. Thank you very much.